This is the Championship Clubs podcast, the show that shines a light on English rugby's second flight. Join us every fortnight and check us out on the socials at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Hello, welcome to the Championship Clubs podcast. My name is Sam Roberts and we have an absolutely action-packed show for you tonight. Really excited to be here. Alongside me, Gareth Alred. Gareth, good afternoon to you, or good morning, or good evening, whenever you're listening to this show. I suppose it's always a bit difficult when you introduce people on a podcast. You don't know what time people are listening. But hello, Gareth Alred, how are you?
Good afternoon, Sam. I can say what time we're recording at. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Good to see you again. And thank you for stepping in as our special guest host today.
Yeah, it's a very special show, keeping people in touch with everything that's going on. And we've got two very special guests. Along in a while, Doncaster's own Billy McBryde. I'm really fascinated to talk to him about his transition out of Wales and, of course, how he's getting on in the north and all things father and son as well. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that in due course. But our first guest is from perhaps one of the prettiest places that you could get in Championship Rugby. And I hope clubs listening will excuse me when I introduce them. And I think I've got to give it the official title, haven't I, Mark? It is the Santa Fe International field of play down in Jersey. Mark Morgan, Jersey Reds champion, is with us. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good day, afternoon, evening, whatever it is. Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's really good to have you on. Very good to have you on. Not least of all, and I'm sure we'll come to it in due course, but the Bedford Jersey game is upon us. People are already talking about that Boxing Day clash. I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment. But well done at the moment for your season so far, Mark. And tell us all about it. Tell us how the people of Jersey are feeling about rugby at the moment. You're sitting pretty. You're looking good. There are some obviously great sides in the Championship, but how do you feel that your season's gone so far?
Yeah, well, clearly, as you say, the position in the table tells the story itself. I think it's by far the highest level we've been at this stage of the season since we came into the Championship, whatever it was, 10, 11 years back. So that's very good. There's a lot of buzz on the island, a really good buzz about what's happening. And I think as much as anything, not just about the position itself, but the style of rugby that we've been trying to play. Saturday was an interesting example. We had an amazing first half, put 5 tries on Cov. And to their credit, they really pushed back in the second half. But they were 5 good tries in appalling conditions. And, they weren't by any means all mauled tries. There was some good running rugby played there as well.
And is that a consideration that you've had for a while? Is that something? I mean, when you think about things as a club, even in your board meetings, does it filter in as the overall style of everything? Not just the welcome that you get when you turn up and sort of click through the turnstiles, but also out there on the pitch. I mean, is that something you've spoken about as a club?
Yeah, I think we actually pride ourselves on our hospitality. Everything from corporate side down to the guy coming through the turnstiles, to how we look after visiting sides, visiting, media people, the whole thing. We try to really make it a place that people want to come to. And I think that pays dividends. At the end of the day, we're only a small island and we get regularly 12 to 1,500 people through the gate, not Bedford level, not a Cov level necessarily. But when we've only got 100,000 people in the island, you're talking about 1.5% of the population there. It's not too bad. Well, it's actually a little less than that, but it's not too bad. So, yeah, we try to make it a great experience for whoever's coming for whatever reason and hope they have a great time.
Gareth, do you recognise that? I mean, obviously you're on here as a co-host, and you're doing your media bit today. But obviously you have a very serious other hat with Bedford Blues. Do you recognise that the total package that clubs have is an important thing that everyone? I mean, obviously winning rugby is important, but also a style of everything that goes with the day is important that clubs understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from our perspective, we always say that our aim is to be the best entertainment venue on any given match day across the whole of Bedfordshire, because our competition isn't just other rugby clubs or other sports clubs. I know a bit about Jersey. I was there for just under 18 months. I had a small stint, but that recognised the value that it has to the island. It almost takes on a national identity, which gives them some really cool and different opportunities that others don't have. Here, we pride ourselves on the history and heritage, but equally on the match day experience. So, making sure from whether it's live music, whether it's additional activity, whatever it may be, gives people the real enjoyment factor when they're here. I think Jersey do it brilliantly. I think we're very lucky. You know, Mark mentioned we're probably the best supported club now in the Championship. Now that 13th club has disappeared, that always used to drop down and sway things. But yeah, we see that. I mean, a big part, Mark touched on the type of rugby. That's part of our DNA. And Mike Rhea as I guess it was before Mike, but Mike is certainly very keen. If anybody watched him at fullback back in his day for Cardiff and Wales, he liked that form of rugby, and playing an entertaining brand is something we think appeals to our supporters.
Mark, touching on that, we mentioned Mike Rhea. We mentioned someone who has been with the club for a long time. You yourself, played for the club. You've been on the island for a long time. You've woven yourself into the fabric of the very place that you're trying to promote. Obviously, that must help, and that must give you a sort of buy-in and a sort of presence, which is essential to doing what you do.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think we probably are one of the best supported clubs from a corporate sponsorship perspective in the Championship. And I'm sure a lot of that is down to the fact that, I grew up here. I learned my trade here, as it were, in the banking world. And I think it's important when you're sitting down with potential sponsors, whether it's from the bank, from a law firm, wherever it happens to be, or a construction firm, you've got to have some idea of what their business is about. You've got to have some interest in what they're doing and how well or otherwise they're doing. And I think if you can talk that language, it certainly puts you in a better position to convince them that you're a proposition worth backing.
How important is, because a lot of people talk about the sort of hospitality and the corporate element of it. I mean, it's a difficult one in a sense, because you obviously want to be a fans club, because rugby is about the fans, but corporate is slightly different. How do you sort of play both of those violins, if you extend the metaphor a little bit? How do you get the best out of both of those processes?
So you're absolutely right, and it was something I actually inherited. I've been doing this job for 6 years. It was a position that I inherited. The fact that the main clubhouse itself is put to use for corporate lunches, basically. And again, let's not underplay the value and success of those. We sold out upstairs for the rest of the season now. So, it's a hugely important element of income to us. But you're absolutely right as well. We can't afford to completely alienate the average club attendee. So what we did, we put a big marquee up at the side of the pitch. And at the moment, that's doing a nice kind of business. It's selling pots of, so it could be pots of chili, could be pots of curry, whatever, a reasonable price, a pint at a reasonable price, and somewhere sheltered with a good view onto the pitch that people can gather and talk about the game. And then what we also make sure we do very effectively is, as soon as the pre-match luncheon is over, we ask people to stand, we clear the tables, and right after the game, it's the regular clubhouse. So people do have access, back to their own club right after the game, which is very well appreciated, I think.
And that's kind of what I touched upon there. And this is for you, Gareth, as well. I suppose that the key thing is inclusivity. And of course, in a way, what you're selling with hospitality is a little bit of an exclusivity. You're saying that you're going to get a feeling of the game, or a position of the game, or an access of the game that is not for everyone. But at the same time, rugby is about inclusivity. How does that blend itself for you?
Yeah. Look, we're very lucky, aren't we? We've had a bit of development of our facilities. It's still an old-fashioned ground, but Mark will hopefully see again on Boxing Day. There's been some further development, and we have different offerings. So, we've got our premium hospitality suite, the Dovecote suite, that offers something probably a bit higher end for us, and actually probably is a comparative level to what happens at Jersey, which is really good. But then we've got the marquee, that's a bit more of a party venue, but still a hospitality pre-match, then gets wiped out as soon as the game kicks off, and live music afterwards. And then we've got the new Borough at the Blues, which is a great venue, which has taken on a different audience for us, a bit more of a street food entry-level hospitality experience. Then we've got the private boxes, and then we've got bars. You can play pub golf at Golden Road quite easily, because we've got 10 bars that you can make your way around, even one for after you finish. So it's slightly different, and that's the great thing of the Championship. There's so many different models with their own identity and history. We've got to be careful that we don't lose them, but at the same time, we've probably got to work a bit more collaboratively, if I can say the word, around those ideas and make them work. But yeah, it's important you blend all of them. I think everybody's in a different situation. With their crowd, Jersey was really unique, where it probably has the highest attendance of corporate hospitality to fan base. I used to look out there and think, it could be a sustainable model by having 30% of its spectators being in corporate hospitality, whereas we're probably more at 15%, but we have a bit more of a blend. So, I don't see too much difference between sponsors and supporters at Bedford, because typically they're all part of the Blues family, as we would call it. And the very fabric of the club is that everybody is, Sam, you're one of the golden children of Bedford Rugby Club. So you've been brought up here. So, look, I think it's really important for us that everybody finds their inclusive part, which probably leads on to why we created the foundation and the community department as well. But that's a story for a different day.
Indeed. I'm going to come back to you, Mark, and talk about, it's a difficult word. It's a word that's thrown around a lot in Championship clubs, and it's ambition. Where are Jersey and with where you find the club at the moment? And I appreciate you might not want to be too bold and lay too much out here, but can you say where your ambitions lie with the club?
Yeah, I mean, very clearly, it's a published ambition. With the funding situation the way it is, we cannot possibly go to the Premiership at this stage. We're very open about that. And I don't think many clubs would want to, given the unfair level of funding from one set of clubs to another. So our very clear ambition at this stage is to be a top half Championship team, driving towards sustainability. That's I think it doesn't sound very glamorous, but I think if we could achieve that, we'd be pretty chuffed with it.
What do you say then because and I run into them quite a bit. I run into in the circles I sort of come into contact with fans. You will often hear the idea that really the only ambition that you need to have is why don't you want to be an Exeter? Why don't you want to get to the Premiership? Now, can you just elaborate for those perhaps I'm tuning in for the first time, just to understand why that isn't? I mean, I know, because I'd probably give a similar answer to that fan that you would about what it is, and for me, I wish more people had the appreciation of being a top second tier side first and foremost before anything else happened. But can you in your own words, can you sort of talk about why what you would say to a fan that was contrary to, well, we actually, the Premiership isn't an ambition of ours?
So I would firstly state that there's no lack of ambition in terms of playing great rugby and delivering a great experience. There's no lack of ambition whatsoever there. And in fact, I think given the resources that we all have to work with, we do a damn good job. I'd maybe answer the question in a slightly different way and say, why would you want to be a Premiership club? You show me one that's making any money right now. And if you didn't have Mr. Rich Man sitting behind that club, you'd have nothing. Now, that is not a sustainable business model. Forget the lack of funding for us. It is not a sustainable business model for our sport in the country. And we all know PRL is a standalone unit. We can't influence that. We can't do anything about it. But it does surprise me that we allow, the absolute top echelon of our sport in the country to be run on a loss-making basis. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Any other industry, you'd be out on your backside. You wouldn't have a club, simply put. So I'd turn it around a little bit and say it's a bigger question than do we in the Championship, have ambition. I think it's how are we going to put this game to rights? How are we going to get it on a sustainable basis across the board? And by the way, I don't have the answer, so don't go there.
Don't worry. I wasn't gonna crucify you by following up that question with, well, go on, then tell us how. Gareth, go on.
Well, just and just to arrest that, I mean, it was interesting in Mark's answer, because yes, I probably knew it was heading that way, and it's a very similar answer to what we would give. and probably two clubs that are not in two different situations. The interesting thing would be, if you ask Mark in this case, what your ambition would be if it was a level playing field, i.e., you're receiving 159,000 from central funding this year, and it doesn't look too set to change. We'll move on to that in a little while, I'm sure. As opposed to the several millions of pounds in the Premiership. So let's say you were promoted and you received the same shareholding, which, we like to live in la-la world sometimes, but we know it's not going to happen. But if that was the case, would you be interested in being promoted?
Absolutely. No question. Without being flippant, why wouldn't you? I mean, clearly that's the nirvana, isn't it? We all have the same opportunity. And your success isn't driven by the depth of pockets that you have sitting in the boardroom, but by what you deliver as a club and on the field.
This is a difficult question, Mark. What's the first thing? And I know you said you don't have the answer, but what would be the first step? And that links into a conversation that we're going to have around this strategic review and where we feel it's headed. What do you think is the first good step that this, and I don't just mean leagues, but the sport, the sport of rugby in England, what's the first step that it needs to take in your mind to sort of perhaps right its passage?
Well, it's interesting that you sort of opened it up to other sports, because I often think and often say that any sports governing body, we happen to be talking about rugby, but it doesn't matter. It could be football, it could be hockey, it could be netball, it doesn't matter. Their primary objective must surely be to ensure that their sport thrives at every single level. And that word thrive means, that everybody's getting a great opportunity to flourish, to develop their skills, to go forward, to get as high as they want, or just to play Sunday pub rugby. It doesn't matter. But everybody's got to have that opportunity. And from where I sit, I'm not seeing a lot of thriving, if you would like to put it that way. I look across the water at our friends in Guernsey. Guernsey are playing now in National 2, and doing pretty okay. They're about, I think, 5th or 6th in the table there, something like that. They certainly have ambitions to push towards level 3, which would be National 1. Yet last season, the £100,000 that they were getting to help cover their, as you can imagine, very expensive travel costs was completely taken away. Our women's team here in Jersey had its funding completely taken away. Right, and I'm not saying necessarily that we need special treatment because of where we are, but it is tremendously expensive, as you could imagine, for us. So everyone will obviously think of Jersey Reds, the first team, the pro team. Yes, we're on and off the island every other week, but so are our amateurs. Our amateurs have to play. Our amateur males have to play on the mainland. Our amateur women play on the mainland, and about 5 levels of our juniors play on the mainland, because there's no competition here. So I think that the funding that these guys and our friends in Guernsey were receiving was in recognition of, that there has to be some help there, some small amount of help to ensure that the game can thrive in these areas. So when I talk about not, for me, and I accept it's been tough times, but for all of that funding at a lower level to have been drained away over the past couple of seasons, it is horrendous.
Yeah, I think just to add to that on Sam's question, I think the wider part, I think they are two separate issues: the Championship and Elite Rugby versus what the RFU probably first objective in many ways should be, and that is participation, which has, let's not forget, has a major issue. So I play for a local club here, and Bedford Queens, and they struggle with getting numbers out on a Saturday, and it's the classic run around, right? Who's available, and yet they've got an former international player, Moritz Botha, as head coach, and still struggling to get players in. And if I think about my time in Jersey, I actually turned out for a brilliant little club, La Keneve, great set of lads, and yet I think that club doesn't even exist anymore. And I think there's been struggles out there. I think they probably get together for a piss up every once in a while. They were very good at that, but it is a challenge. I think from a championship perspective, we've just got to look at where the value is, and we know there is. I mean, actually, Mark spoke recently, and various other people in the championship around the sheer quality and depth of players that have gone on and played Premiership and for England. And It's scary. I mean, Mark, what did you Jersey as a relatively newcomer? I mean, what were your numbers were scary?
Well, since again, since I've been back, I don't, I haven't focused too much before that, but plus I think we weren't in a position to push people on. But in the last 6 years, we've sent 36 players up to Premiership or equivalent. So we've had some go to Scotland, some go to Wales, but 36. And in the last not Six Nations, the autumn internationals, there were 6 ex-Reds turning out for various home nations. And people, Kieran Hardy for Wales had 2 seasons with us. We pulled him out of the Welsh Premiership where he was just being buried. And that I saw that young boy grow to a man in those 2 years with the level of attention he was given, and obviously a tremendous lot of effort he put into himself. But there he is now turning out for Wales. So there's a lot of examples like that, and Bedford exactly the same. I just saw the second Cowan Dickey moving up to Leicester, be given a full-time contract today. So there's so much of that going on there, and I honestly believe that the rugby world, the English rugby world, is missing a trick. We do talk about it a lot amongst ourselves, but we can't implement it ourselves. But this is the obvious place to develop young English rugby players. It's the obvious place.
Well, you look at Leicester, a good example. Mark mentions them. I mean, they're 4 English qualified hookers. Tom Youngs obviously did the dual reg scheme, so Bedford and Nottingham. Cowan Dickey, as you say, through Pirates. Charlie Clare actually spent a month on loan at Jersey, but with Bedford. And Dolly, obviously coming out of nowhere, left field. I think played briefly at Jersey as well. But
we had him for a season. It was a season here, yeah.
So look, there's so many examples. I think we're going to put something out from the podcast group shortly on the sheer stats and on the numbers there, because it is worth reinforcing. But the challenge is bigger than that, because I think that's fact. I think the development tool is fact. People can try and argue it, but it's very easy for us to give evidence of what the league does and continues to do to develop players. I think what we need to look into is the competition structure, which is being looked at, and obviously the commercial side of it. And I guess we'd be interested in your thoughts, Mark, on that really, and what the direction of travel is and where you think it should go.
Well, in terms of the season structure, I think we'd all agree that for the past, since the demise of the British and Irish Cup, what we've had as a cup competition has been poor. And I think I can speak for a lot of other clubs, but certainly our club, if you talk to your spectators or your sponsors about which matches they want to come and see, it's not the cup games. There's very little interest in the cup games. So I've been very forthright with the group that's working with Connor at the moment from a Jersey perspective in saying that we have to have a 14-team league. We might not be able to go to it this season, next season, but within a couple of seasons we need to get there, unless there is an exciting, interesting cup option. And nobody comes up with that. The obvious ones that are floating around out there is, why don't we have a cup competition between championship clubs and A-sides from the Premiership? I think that would be brilliant, and I think it would get a huge amount of support. But I don't hear a lot of positivity from the other end on that, on that idea. So go back to that question. The answer is, without a really exciting cup competition, we need to get to 14 teams as soon as possible, because from a commercial perspective, I know we can sell those. I know that we'll get corporate sponsorship, we'll get people through the gates to watch the game. So that's where I would head.
It's quite interesting. It'd probably be easier if we were at loggerheads, Mark, and make this a better podcast if we could argue with each other. And I would love to do that, but no, it's we're very much aligned on that. I think the only difference would have been the BNI Cup. Actually, we were huge supporters of. We were probably the problem we were in the minority. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe other clubs weren't, and that was probably upsetting. We put a lot of thought into different themes, ladies' days, different events and themes that worked really well. Sam managed to auctioneer a number 23 naked man his shirt off for about £1,000 for £1,000 for charity. So we had some success. But the point I guess for us was playing different teams, the journeys, the real rugby stories. We loved going to Ireland. obviously I enjoyed going back home to Wales. And those stories were great. But
I was referring more to the recent cup setup. Not BNI we like.
Absolutely.
BNI we like. Yeah, BNI we like.
And look, we don't want to play. None of us want to play the same team. 5 times in a season. Even us and Ampt will get a bit fed up probably facing each other that many times. So look,
only so many battles in Bedfordshire, right?
Well, I don't know. We're still selling it, but no. I think it's really critical. I think the Prem Champ Cup would be exciting, but you're right, Mark. We need buy-in on that, and if not, we need to get a stronger league concept in place as possible. And for us, renewing some old rivalries. Looking at what geography we could find in the other clubs in this league. We've got to be careful we don't become a London-centric league, but equally at the same time, there's clubs like Rosalind Park who deserve a shot. They have a great setup off the field as well. So we've got to give opportunity, but I think going to 14 so quickly, we're still a little bit unsure about where Scottish lie. Although I think they very much see themselves as part of this league, and who knows who goes up yet? Who knows if Ealing even take their shot? But I think we're very aligned.
Yeah. Can I just steer the conversation? We talked about development there, which was really quite key. But I just want to, because I know that Jersey do this very well. I know that Bedford do it very well as well, and it is a part of the game that I think also needs a little bit of consideration. And that's the other end. It's the player who has perhaps done their part and played their bit, and maybe even played in the top league, and is in a slightly different transition and coming away from the game and still has 2, 3, maybe 3 years left in the tank in some shape or form, but is also looking to make a transition into some sort of business role, whether that be sort of small business or larger business. And I know that you, Mark, at Jersey, you're very mindful of that. And whilst we really sort of, it's easy to sell the young players, making the move and develop into the Premiership, I really do believe that the Championship has a really important part to play for the pro who is looking to transition out of the game and do it safely. Mark, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, without blowing our own trumpet, I think you just take a look at our staff. We've given Rob Webber, a young English coach. We all know his background, 250 odd games in the Premiership and so on and so forth, played for England, but very clearly had made up his mind. It was time to stop playing. Very clearly wants to be a coach at the top level. And we'd be more than delighted to give him that opportunity. And I think he's doing a great job, absolutely brilliant job, developing well. We last season had Tom Williams playing for us, young Welsh lad, but 30-ish, ready to make that move. When Ed Robinson moved on to Wasps, that gave us an opportunity to blood this young fellow and see how he's doing. And again, he's developing into a great young coach. So just as we talked about it being a training ground for young players, it absolutely should be for your S&C guys, for your physios, for your coaches, and the whole schmuck, really.
Do you get any opportunity in which to, because I know Bedford does, and perhaps, but there will be some businesses on the island as well that you may be able to make introductions and get people to talk to. Is there an opportunity within that to sort of get people talking to players looking to transition out of rugby?
You mean from a job perspective?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we run a program within the club for our existing players. So not so much for somebody from Gloucester or whatever, but for our existing players, helping them understand what that transition might look like. Because I think young lads will come to us because they think they've got a shot of going up. Yeah. And if that hasn't happened in 2 to 3 years' time, they have a life decision to make. And what we try to do is put a program in place, working with a local recruitment firm who is also a sponsor, as it happens, but a local recruitment firm who talk to them about skills they don't even know they've got. Right? What they can't understand how being a rugby player is going to help them do anything else whatsoever. Yet they've got so many great transferable skills, discipline, hard work, teamwork. There's so many great things that would work in any industry, and it's helping them understand the value of those and giving them the ability to, as you alluded to there, then to be able to talk to firms outside about what that might look like. We've got a lot of lads who have had a university degree, university education. They got a law degree, for example. You've got other lads that maybe have got nothing better than O levels or A levels, but there's a route out for them. We just need to help them find it. And I think it's taken us a few years to get that in place because we didn't honestly have the resources to do it. But working with this local recruitment firm, it's something we have implemented now. I think it's really important for these guys.
And as far as young development, Gareth, the key thing is, of course, you can't really develop young players unless you've got experience at the club. And it's the players on the way down who are handing out these absolute golden nuggets to these young players and developing them over a 6-month period where in a different situation without that experience also in your side, because you can't just have a squad of under 23s. Although it would be it'd be great. You need those longer standing, more experienced individuals to play their part.
Yeah, I mean, I could answer it in 2 words. Paul Tupai. He literally was a cornerstone of the club, and what a man to have in your changing room. I mean, he was about 60 when he retired, wasn't he, the other year for us? He was, you think about George Cruz coming in from Dual Reg from Saracens, how valuable having him next to him in the changing room. Also, just talk about discipline, keeping the boys honest, keeping you work hard. He's still leading the charge in all fitness. I mean, talk about Paul Tupai, but actually a guest we had on the podcast recently, Mcbride. I mean, what a warrior. And there's lots of them. Matt Challoner at Doncaster. There's been loads of them. Ours is our transition piece, and to answer the first question you asked around that, ours has changed slightly. So the funding cuts and COVID meant that we decided to move back to part-time. That meant we had to look at transition. So we very much combined those offers. We've got players who come back to us because they've already got their mind on that. We've had some great examples of players doing that. Lee Dixon. We managed to only sign him and move him to the Championship by the fact that we could look at an opportunity with a private school here for him to start that road and that journey. And he's now very successfully head of sport I won't get it wrong, but somewhere where that's the one I was going to. Thank you. His former school, and we got the next phase of that. Alex Day, we're seeing the value he adds to the youngsters here, and it's very much about that transition, and we've got a lot of them, but. We've coupled it with our dual reg agreement and our strategic partnership with Northampton Saints. So we've still got the youngsters learning from those players. But everyone's different. Jersey are in a very different scenario, like Cornish Pirates, but you can't, it's not as easy to move part-time, licenses, living, all those challenges. And you've got to find what model works for you. And for us, that's meant that we've added some more of that experience back. And it's paying dividends. It definitely is both on the field, but also for the development of youngsters. So, there's so many great examples of that. And I think it's just really important that you find the right fit for you and the club. We've got players doing pharmaceutical sales, teaching, landscape gardeners, and everything in between. So, it's a bit of a throwback, but it's if we get it right on the pitch, which is our first target, and Mike is, with the resources he's got, is still bringing some magic together. So we're excited. We're excited for Jersey on Boxing Day. That's the big tester.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
It should be great.
Mark is actually, Sam, did you know Mark's actually a big Bedford fan? He's actually from the Shire.
I was born and bred in the Shire, indeed. Absolutely.
Right. Well, that leads me neatly into you can talk us through. Obviously, you would have one of the first things you would have looked at over the weekend was the Bedford Blues versus London Scottish result. That's the one you would have looked at, no doubt. But let me go through the weekend's results. Amtel at Dillingham Park lost out to Cornish Pirates 13-26. Donny against Nottingham, a super rivalry that, but Donny getting the better hand of them, almost hitting the 50-point mark against Nottingham. Bedford Blues, we'll talk about it, probably start it, 24-19, got the bonus point try, but that's as much as we can possibly say about that. Jersey fought well against a resurgent Coventry side, then coming back in the second half to make a real meal of it. We'll obviously talk about that with you, Mark, as well. And then Richmond, it must have ricocheted around the league, the half-time score from Richmond. They were up, I think, 17-0 at half-time against Ealing Trailfinders, but couldn't hold out. They lost 24-33. Let's start with Bedford Blues versus London Scottish, Gareth. I mean, we were both there. an abysmal afternoon. We can blame the weather and we can sort of point our fingers elsewhere, but it was credit to London Scottish as well. They came, they did a job. Blues did have good first half performance, but it didn't quite follow through. And there were a few people leaving Goldington Road feeling as though perhaps it wasn't a vintage Bedford Blues result. How did you feel about it?
I think they were headed to the bars, Sam. They weren't leaving, so it was all good.
I didn't say when they were leaving. They were leaving at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, look, I think we're obviously saving our best for Jersey on Boxing Day, aren't we? It probably, fair to say, I think Mike felt he probably not escaped with it, but we certainly made hard work of that second half. But let's take nothing away from Scottish. I think they're improving week on week. Certainly some good performances in their side. I think their board felt as though they're really happy with where the team's growing to, and that they're getting more competitive. They said themselves, if that was at the start of the season, we'd have still put 30 or 40 points on them even in that display. So, look, I think Scottish made it difficult. I think, did we take our foot off the gas? Did they get a try just before half time? Maybe, but we were just really happy to escape with 5 points out of that game, because at one point, as you know, with 30 men on the pitch, 2 yellow cards, it felt in that last 5 minutes like we were going to come away with nothing. So
I thought they looked a good side. I mean, credit to London Scottish. I thought they came and they did a good job. You've got them next, of course, Mark. And I would say, and I'm sure you would be, operate with a little bit of caution. They are not a bottom place sort of beat them up, sort of. We'll just put the points on. They are getting better and better, and it'll be interesting to see exactly what sort of handful they cause you this weekend.
Well, it will be a good litmus test for them as much as anything, because of course we had them first game of the season over the rag, and we put almost 50 points on them, and they weren't really in the game. But that was first game back in the championship for them, and you just have to look at the results over the past 3 or 4 rounds to see how they are improving. They got their first win, and they taken you guys to the wire at the weekend. I forgot who they had the week before, but again,
Coventry.
Yeah,
Coventry,
yeah. So they've gone well there. So no, we're fully aware that this is banana skin waiting to be trodden upon. So no, the prep will be on point, I think, for that this week.
Yeah, I spoke to Harry Shepherd for quite some time after the game, and he spoke about just a couple of key sort of red zone choices that they made. They went blindside when they perhaps shouldn't have done on one occasion, and he doesn't feel as though it's too far away. And if they can just join it all up, they are going to give a couple of people between there and the end of the season a bit of a bloody nose, and I think that's where they are.
We actually picked their scrum half in the team of the week, Champ Club's poor team of the week, Kieran's. He's actually 5th choice at Ealing, sent on loan to Scottish. I mean, that's quite worrying in itself, because he was, skill set, box kicks. I mean, you'll have to watch out for that, especially on the island, Mark, because it's not easy to take a high ball at any time. So, lots of improvements. But, there was. We were very thankful to get into, I think our players headed straight into their Christmas social. So nobody wants to do that on the back of a loss.
True enough. In the top game on the list, still lost out to Cornish Pirates. They're pushing hard. We know all about them. We know how difficult it is to go down to Cornwall. Mark, forgive me, my knowledge of the fixture list isn't 100%. But you must be playing them again at some time. When are you up against Cornish Pirates again?
Pirates. So they were midway through this round, so it'll be midway through the second half of it, I think. I'll just pull up. Give me a second. I'll put it up here now.
Yeah, no, I've got you. Saturday, 26th of February. There you go.
There you go.
You play them just after us again. Look at that. There's obviously something going on with the fixtures.
Yeah, no, it is. We follow each other now the rest of the season. By the way, we love the Pirates trip. It's the one game of the season where we get a charter, and we sell off 50% of the seats to supporters that want to come along. And it just so happens that our house brew, Jersey Red Bitter, is brewed in Cornwall by an ex-Jersey lad, a guy that used to live here. So we just have to go and do a brewery tour rather on the morning before the game or the afternoon before the game. So it's always a good trip down there. Enjoy it.
I was going to say you have to do it. With arms up.
Oh, it's obligatory.
Yeah, really twisted. Yeah,
obligatory. Yeah. 5 pints and a big pasty. Lovely way to set the day up.
We won't talk about Donny because hopefully we'll have Billy McBryde on in a minute, and I think we'll talk to him and get a bit of an idea of that. But also just talk about Richmond and Ealing. I mean, I was at the Richmond Bedford game, and they came and did a real number on us, and I was worried about it before it kicked off. They did exactly what I thought they were going to do. But this weekend also shows that there is a growing force in the Championship. Richmond, they have, they've had some very canny signings, some very clever pieces of timber added to the shed, and I think Richmond are a really good side. Gareth, go on, say something nice about the Ragsters.
Just enjoyed your analogies and metaphors, Sam. Yeah, look, I'm talking about a piece of timber. Hugh Worthington, actually a former player for us, has been selected in the team of the week this week, and he only managed 40, which is probably about as much as Hugh does ever. But he had an incredible first
40 heifers. Carry on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, farmer from North Wales can be good. In fact, we'll probably speak about him with Billy. Yeah, he's. Look, they've got some quality in there. Clever signings. James Lennon, another player formerly of us. I mean, they've got some good nines there. I mean, Homer playing at fullback or wing, who was at Jersey, is probably one of the best nines in the league, and he's playing in the back three. So, look, they Steve Hill runs a tight ship down there. They've done a good job. Again, we talk about the different models, completely different model. The full-time work, the little. I'll say a bit more than pocket money, but the kind of pay-per-play type model, it maybe doesn't fit a lot of the champ models, and there's been discussions about dual reg, but again, that could be a separate podcast that Mark can give some thoughts on. But all I would say is whatever they're doing, they're bringing it together nicely, and they're definitely more than competitive, as we found out to our cost. And they're a good side. The only challenge is where some of these part-time clubs, including us, match up with a physicality level. So, as we found out in Jersey, maybe early doors, but we just couldn't win a line out. The scrum, we actually competed. We had two lads on dual reg from Saints who did a terrific job actually, but the line out. And I think that's the only difference. You look at some of these full-time sides, that's just sometimes the difference. That front five, big, heavy front five, not allowing us to kind of get in the game. So, that's probably the one challenge that all the part-time clubs will have. Would you agree, Mark, or think?
Yeah, no, I do agree. And it must be quite a challenge for them when they've got to do a Cornish run or a Jersey run. If they're going to want to come or go on the day before, people have got to get out of work, and I guess there are only so many passes you're going to get in a season. So it is tough. But I think Richmond, I've always quite admired, and they've got a unique proposition. Pretty much every one of those lads, if they wanted to and the opportunities were there, they could be professional rugby players. So they've got this fantastic proposition of being a great club for those people who are able to play at the top level but have chosen to go into their respective professions, careers, whatever it happens to be. So we said about it earlier, if you're sitting in Doncaster, you're sitting in Jersey, you're sitting in Penzance, those opportunities aren't there. You just can't. So they've got a unique proposition, and they do it really, really well.
Last bit with you, Mark. I'm going to put you on the spot. Good win, as you said, at the weekend against Coventry. Who's your player at Jersey at the moment who's been the nicest surprise this season? Who's been the man? Oh, wow. Obviously, you've got a lot of great players over there, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's the chap that's made you go, oh, he's really doing well?
There are a couple, but if you're going to make me go for one, I'll go for a couple. I'm going to go for Wes White. He's been playing number 8. He's the son of Jake White, as it happens, the South African World Cup winning coach. But he's yes, indeed. But he's just really stepped up to another level. And he's has been keeping Guy Thompson sort of back a little bit, or pushing Guy for that number 8 role. But we haven't had a fit number 8 for the last 3 games now. So all of our 3-8s are out at the moment, but that's we'll be fine. But no, Jake, I think, has really stepped up. Saw young Will Brown moved over from Ampthill, scored a hat-trick in the first half at the weekend. And a couple of those was fantastic finishes. I mean, really top quality finishes out on the wing. So, yeah, there are a couple of lads that have really stepped forward. But what I would always like to throw in there is, I think part of our strength this season has been a fantastic togetherness amongst the squad. And they really do work for each other. We had the first 5 games without a recognised 10. We just had 3 games without a recognised 8. But they've got together, they've covered that, they've figured out how to do the job and gone out there, and they're still getting it done, thankfully.
Same question for you, Gareth. I mean, I could pick a couple, but go on.
Why don't you pick a couple then, Sam? I'll only get in trouble.
I know you're a bit closer to the fire. You know, they're absolutely tuned in, pouring in, listening on every word now. I don't think it would be too much of a surprise to pull out the name of Will Maisley. Not that I was too surprised that with how he has played, but just the consistency level that he has been able to put in sort of week in, week out has been really, really pleasing. I suppose the name that stands out is actually one that we've had a bit of trouble in, and I'm really pleased to see him pushing on. Jack Hughes has come in, I think, and done a really good job. Obviously, you know, the injury situation at Hook at one stage was looking a little bit worrying, and to see Jack push on and score again at the weekend. Did he have a couple of tries at the end? Did he notch the second one as well?
There's a bit of a fight for which one had that. I mean,
I would say him.
I think a lot have. So I think Mike's got his recruitment really spot on this year, and not just, you know, Mike signs people not just based on their playing ability, but on their fit and on their culture. And you know, a couple of forwards, Luke Frost and Alex Wolford, very different characters. One calling the line out, one smashing everything that's in sight. I'll let you choose which one, but they're, you know, really added quality there. And then the back division, hard to argue with Maisie, but I think part of that is the fact that the competition he's receiving. I mean, signing Louis Grimaldi, which was, you know, Amptill's captain and star player in many ways, means that we've really pushed Will. I think to, you know, you could pick either one of them, and I feel for Louis at times, and it's a tough one to manage because Will's playing so well. But I think the fact that we've got those options, bringing back Dean Adamson back to club, you know, there's so many good ones. And then there's the Saints deal, you know, Tom Litchfield, a Bedford boy through and through and through. And look, getting to see him in a Bedford shirt, bringing back former Northampton Saints player Jamie Elliott, another Bedford boy. I think, you know, that's been really good for us and really fits the culture of the club. So, you know, I think we're in a good place on that side of it. I'll add one Jersey player, and that is a lad who's just been through the ringer and a former player for us, and that's Sam Leeming. I mean, you couldn't wish for a better bloke to have in your squad. Just such a good lad, and what he's been through. And credit to Jersey. I take my hat off to Jersey. What they've done to support him, I think, is terrific. So well done, Mark, on that.
Thank you. He's a great lad.
You're listening to the Championship Clubs podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Well, joining us now on the Championship Clubs podcast, I'm really delighted to say a man is making a fine impression up in the north of England for the Doncaster Knights. It is Billy McBryde. Billy, nice to have you with us. I trust you're well. I trust everything is going well up north.
Thanks very much for having me on. First and foremost, we're all good. Just come off a good win on the weekend against Notts, so the mood of the camp is all good at the minute.
Well, we've just been down the fixture list of the weekend. We left your game out because we knew we'd be talking to you. Tell us just how well Donny played. I mean, Bedford, I watched play Nottingham a couple of weeks ago, and they played well, but Nottingham looked a good outfit, and it must have been a good performance to rack up nearly 50 points at the weekend.
Yeah, it was. I think we spoke about it today, actually, when we reviewed it. It's one of our most professional performances that we've put in this year. You know, Notts had a week off due to their rearranged schedule against Jersey, so we were expecting some fire to come out because they'd had a week off. But yeah, we executed our game plan. We went out there with a plan of how we were going to beat them, and we did really well. To score early on, to get a bonus point before half time was brilliant for us, and to be able to maintain that really throughout the poor conditions which were second half was a great win for us.
Before you came on, we were just talking about each and every club and the way that everyone seems to be really sorting themselves out and getting into a good vein of form at the moment. There's no bad club. Bedford found that London Scottish are an increasingly good side at the moment. You're into your second season at Donny. I mean, the hits keep coming, don't they? I mean, every weekend there is a different Rubik's Cube laid out in front of you and a different problem to overcome. And it's proving a good and strong competition.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can look at the table and how many points separates, the top from the bottom. Really, there's not many in there. And as you said, there's a different challenge each week. One that us as a playing group are really thriving on. Really, especially with the big block of games that we've had from about a month ago through to Christmas. Especially us in Doncaster, I think we're playing 7 in a row. So there's no real time for reflection. We do our debrief, but it's straight on to the next challenge, which for us is Coventry this week, a team that we lost to the opening weekend of the season, and a team that we know can be very dangerous. So for us, it's about going out there and again executing a game plan, which we think we can turn them over.
Billy,
Go on, Gareth.
Oh, sorry, Sam. You forgot you had somebody else on here, Sam, didn't you?
I did. I just want to speak to Billy. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to ask about your own performance, Billy. You're obviously well known to Donny and the Championship for playing fullback. Even though you've played 10 at RGC, most people recognise you're from God's country with your accent. So just tell us a little bit about you playing 10 at the weekend. I mean, you've been Team of the Week a few times at 15. Sam Olver last year's 10 of the season. So is Bodes just looking at manoeuvring different things and seeing different combinations, or are you thinking 10 is the preferred position?
Sorry, just say that again. God's country, you said, wasn't it? Yeah, that's it.
Three of us are Welsh.
Yeah, come on.
No, as you said, I initially signed as a 10. I'd never had any previous experience of playing 15. It was actually the first game of the season against Ampton last year where I came on as a 15, and we were really struggling down there, and we came back to win. Similar story to us this season, really. So I came on as a 15 then, and Bodes came up to me and said, "Look, how do you feel about playing 15 the next game," which was Cov at the time. And I said, "Look, I'll give it a go. I've never played there before. Obviously, it's going to be a bit different." And he, to be fair, made it quite easy. He said, "Look, you don't need to do anything different. Obviously, defensively, we're going to talk you through your role and stuff. But it's a case of getting 2 first receivers on the field, trying to play a pattern which suits both a left and right-footed kicker in me and Sam when we're on the field together. It gives us a little bit of a different dimension in our attacking play, especially if you're defending against us, especially this year with a 50-22 rule. It's a bit of a nightmare for any 15/wingers out there when you've got a left and right-footed option. So I obviously spent, a lot of last year playing 15 and then moved to 10 for the latter part of most games. Last weekend then, Bose just came up to me and said, "Look, you've earned your shot, really." I mean, it's been a little bit frustrating, obviously playing out of position, but I understand why. It's for the benefit of the team. And again, if the team wants me to play 15, then I'm more than happy to throw my hands up and do that, as long as the team comes first. But I was really excited to get the number 10 jersey on this week, and it was a case of executing that game plan as I've mentioned. And for me, it was a little bit nerve-wracking because I haven't played 10 in so long. But I really enjoyed it, and the guys around me made my work a lot easier. Fordy, the backs coach, and Bowles put their full faith in me, and I suppose it's something that moving forward is going to be really important because touch wood, if there is a knock or two in the back line, then it needs to be some depth there. So it was just a case of me proving what I can do in the 10 shirt, and then we'll see what selection brings this weekend.
Big win against Ealing the other week as well. What about the word promotion? Does that get talked about? I mean, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, no, we take it 1 week at a time and we only focus on the next week. I know what you're going to say, but I mean, come on. I mean, is that something that you talk about?
Look, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that it is in the back of some players' minds. I think there's a fine balance of being ambitious and then taking it week by week. So we're an ambitious team. We know that we're the only team in Yorkshire. I think I think everyone in England would like another team in the Prem from Yorkshire. As you know, it's been a couple of years since that's happened. But as you say, we do take it week by week. But then it is hard when you come up against teams like Ealing and you manage to turn them over. And there is a little bit of, it wets the lips a little bit, doesn't it? When you think about wins like that. I mean, for me, I can only speak about it. I think that's probably the best win I've ever had in my career, that win against Ealing. And not the fact it was Ealing, not the fact that they've, everyone speaks about their budget and the players, the world-class players that they've got, but it was the fact we did it in such poor conditions. I mean, I can't describe the conditions. They were awful. And the fact that we managed to win and, not just win, we won significantly. The scoreboard was true to how we played and how well we executed that game. But as you say, we're an ambitious club. We'd love to be promoted, don't get me wrong, but we know that we've got a lot of hard work before that happens.
I thought you were going to say, because you went in from 70, Billy, and it was all about your try.
I did nothing. I'm not even.
You look like you couldn't run a single yard further at that particular time. You were looking for every man around you, but you celebrated in the 22.
I mean, I've looked back. I was a bit embarrassed by that. But no, Jack Spittle did most of the work. He had the assist. He made the interception. I was just there, just tracking. Managed to get the offload in. I just tried to turn on the afterburners, I suppose. It was a long way out, but I just put my head down. As you can see by the clip, my shoulder when I run, my shoulders are up here. There's no real technique to my running. I'm just going head down, and luckily, that sealed the win for us.
Mark, can I switch it to you and say, when those results sort of flick across your screen, you fire up the iPhone at the end of the game and you try and find the other results, and you see that result from Doncaster, it does something for everyone else, doesn't it? Because Ealing are a strong side. There's no two ways about it. They are, almost, sort of champions elect at the moment, because they are we know how good they are. But when Donny do that for Jersey, for Bedford, for all the other teams around it, just gives you a little bit of a bounce in your step, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And you mentioned a moment ago the Richmond game against Ealing at the weekend. We scored 5 tries in the first half this weekend, but there was as much talk about the fact that Richmond was 17-0 up at half time as our 5 tries. So it does. And just look back over the past few weeks. Pirates have beaten Ealing. Donny have beaten Ealing. We went and took 2 points from them at Valley's Way, which nobody's taken a single point yet. So they're there. I think what it tells us is the quality of the teams that are in this league at the moment, and nobody can take anything for granted whatsoever. So no, it was a good win, and congratulate you on that.
I'm going to jump in with a question for Billy, actually, and it's regards the main man, the head coach, the director of rugby is now. I've got a long story with Bodes. I was at Donny with him, and then I was in Mark's neck of the woods in Jersey with him. So I know Bodes well, and he hasn't always been the most refined giver of feedback or head coach. He's a real man manager, shall we say? So the rumor is you're already a senior player in that group. So just tell us how you what your relationship with Bodes, your one-to-one relationship with him, but also, he's taken on the mantle and he seems to be doing a great job running the group.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a lot of time for Bodes. He gave me a shot with Doncaster when, I would probably, how can I put it? There wasn't a real shot to have, but he took a gamble on me, really. and my relationship with him is very good. I'd like to think that on and off the pitch we get on really well. Outside of rugby, just two men just speaking, having good conversations to me. But yeah, I mean the seniority thing. I'd like to think that I'm very vocal in training. I set high standards for myself. I'm my own biggest critic when it comes to having a bad game or making a mistake. And I think he sees that in me, and he knows that I'm a driver of my own standards within the group, really. So it was, he invited me on the leadership group, which of course I accepted the invitation to. And don't get me wrong, this season we've lost a lot of experience from last year. Your likes of Matthew Challoner, Bomber, Charlie Foley, senior members in the squad, which we've replaced them really with a lot of good youngsters who are, as I said, ambitious, full of energy, and just want to play rugby. And I suppose I'm just one of those ones from last year which played quite a lot of minutes, and ones that he trusts me to set those standards. So, but yeah, my relationship with Bose is great. Full respect for him as a coach and as a bloke.
I think he's another one of those coaches. Sorry, Sam, and I'll let you go. But I think he's another one. We talk about that development tool as players. He is a great example of somebody who moved to Jersey, having had a fantastic career at Donny, skilled in the dark arts of the set piece, it's fair to say. And what a great job he did with a pack at Jersey before doing a great job at Leeds under very difficult conditions. And it's great to see the success of it. Donny's point, I just hope they could make the most of it before Premiership clubs come calling, because you can't imagine it would be that long.
Yeah, my question was going to be about the other chap in your life, who I'm sure can't possibly not send you a couple of text messages occasionally just to see how you're getting on. That's your old man. For the uninitiated, your dad is a rather large figure in Welsh rugby in all sorts of different ways. But how many times does he get over and have a look at you? And indeed, what's it like having a dad in the game, and how does that manifest itself with you as a player, and how has your relationship sort of developed over the years with him?
Good question. I mean, look, I'm extremely proud of what he's achieved. Obviously, the past year going on the Lions tour, but previous to that, being the Welsh forwards coach for 13 years. Signing in Leinster, one of the top teams in the world, and then going on Lions tour. I'm extremely proud of him. He's managed to catch a few games actually. Obviously, last year there was no supporters at the ground, so he couldn't catch anything of last season. This season, he managed to come over for a few days. Actually, spent 2 days with us. I say more the units. So Bodes and Nathan Smith, the forwards coach, managed to prick his brains a little bit. So he managed to watch the session, and I think they got quite a lot out of it. He managed to come to the Richmond at home game, the Hartbury away game, where I had a bus of 20 Welsh lads all on the beer from 10 o'clock in the morning coming to watch me. And he managed to come to Pirates away 2 weeks ago. So he has managed to come over quite a bit. And look, I speak to him on a regular occasion. I'm a bit of a nose outside of training and outside. I think I've watched 6 games of rugby this weekend alone, let alone played one as well. So I'm always, picking his brains about what they're doing in Leinster. How are they operating? And he's just as interested to know how I'm doing. He doesn't really want to speak too much about himself. But he's always interested to know, right, what's the game plan this week? Just gives me a couple of pointers about, what he thinks. He'll try and watch our games back and give me some feedback. And I suppose at a younger age, I was very, very stubborn in the way that he gave me feedback. I didn't really take it very well at all. But I'd like to think now that I'm a bit older, that I can take it. And I appreciate everything that he's done in the game. So I can take it a lot more from him. But yeah, as I said, he's a good character. He gives me a lot of confidence in my own game. And yeah, as I said, he's one. Who better to ask really than him? So I'm very fortunate in that aspect.
It's wonderful to hear you speak in such tones, and interesting also to hear the fact that previously your relationship would have been slightly different, and it takes you to get to a level of individual, of human, of rugby player, to be able to take on the sort of advice that you need. And of course, that relationship with your own dad is very difficult as well. You've got that. He will watch the game in a different way with you on the field, won't he? And there's no two ways you can do anything about that. And that's always interesting. I speak to a lot of players about who've got dads in the game and dads outside of the game. The relationship you have with your dad. There'll be people listening to this podcast right now wanting to know what to say to their offspring. They'll be out on a Sunday morning, wanting to know whether they shout encouragement. What do they say on the car journey home, Billy? What would you say? What would you say as a piece of advice to give dads of young players?
I think you can get caught in a trap really of saying too much. When I go home and I see youngsters or fathers shouting everything, it really infuriates me because, look, your dad wants the best for you. I understand that. But when you're younger, especially when I was growing up, my dad was never the one to scream and shout. He'd always say it in a subtle way. But I was very, hot-headed. As you are a youngster, you think you know better than your own dad. And especially looking back, it embarrasses me a little bit that I knew better than my dad when that's his job. So I'm sure he'd argue the point really that he thinks maybe I still think I know better than him, but there we are. But yeah, look, I think sometimes less is more. Do you know what I mean? At a young age, you just want your boys to play as much as you can. Every Sunday they want to be there, enjoying playing rugby with their mates, not having to worry about what they're going to say in the car on the way home. You want to go out there and enjoy, play with a smile on your face. And that sounds as cringy as it sounds, that's what it's all about. Not having to worry too much about what your dad's going to say or what your friend's dad's going to say to you. And I think as young coaches, I've witnessed it firsthand. They try and bring structure in. They should be here, or coming around the corner, you're out of position, where instead of, look, you just look what's in front of you. If there's a gap in front of you, you run in it. If there's not a gap in there, you pass to someone that's in a gap. And as simple as it sounds, that is what I try and live by sometimes. I can overanalyze things in my head about, what am I thinking about? What am I doing here? Instead of playing it with instinct. So that's what I'd say to any young dad that's trying to coach their boys. Sometimes just encouragement is all they need. Even if they've had a tough day at the office, maybe just that little word of positivity can get them to go out training the next training day. That's what's important.
Sounded almost like the Bedford mantra at times there, rather than it being the youngsters.
I was just about to bring Mark in and say, Mark, do you have a question for Billy? And it's not, do you know how lovely the weather is down in Jersey for most of the year? And yet, Gareth got in there with, that sounds like the Bedford way. Can you all stop trying to sign Billy McBryde, please?
To be fair, all things on paper, Billy McBryde and Mikey Ray are already family connections, aren't they? So, there's nothing like that there. But, Mikey likes to play with a smile on his face and into the holes. I was just going to ask something quite serious, getting onto the champ, and I'll let Mark add to this. But it's really, I guess, for you, Billy, and that is coming from Wales and being in that goldfish bowl almost growing up, having ended up maybe not, and we can talk about any opportunities of the regions. I think you spent a bit of time, but it didn't quite come off. Going from RGC into the champ, what were your views of the championship before you arrived? What were your views even growing up? Did you think, that's a great league, that's somebody I want to be, that's really enticing, oh my God, it's a great competition? Or was it, oh God, okay, well, maybe it'll give me a shop window? Just what were your thoughts on the championship?
Well, I think growing up in Wales, there's always that respect for the championship, purely on this. It's a similar sort of, how can I put it, situation with the Welsh Premiership and the Championship, where, how can I put this, in terms of, there's a lot of talent to be had in the Welsh Prem and the Championship, where maybe it's not looked upon as a serious competition. When I was growing up in Wales, did all my academy stuff, regional stuff with the Scarlets, got released when I was 21. And if I'm honest with you, it was the best thing that happened to me. I came out of the under-20s, thought that because we'd won the Grand Slam and I'd been to a World Cup, that I was almost, going to walk in to a regional spot and, I was going to play a lot. But turns out that didn't happen. And going to play for Llanelli, which was the semi-pro league, semi-pro team that I was assigned to, made me realise that, hold on, I'm not quite as good as what I think I am. So that led me to 2-3 seasons playing with Llanelli in the Welsh Prem, where I learned a lot, going to places like Bedford, Cross Keys, Pontypridd. They are tough places to go as a 17, 18-year-old, playing against...
Especially as a 10.
Exactly, playing against men that have been in the game a lot longer than I have. And then when I got released from the Scarlets, got told there was nothing there for me, I actually went to Donny first. So Clive and the attack coach at the time came down to watch me play for Llanelli. I went up the next day, went to see the facilities, and almost shook hands with Clive. Everything was good, but the deal fell through for one reason or another. So that led me to, hardly anything really. So I went to meet with Merthyr, which were the top dogs in the Welsh Prem, and RGC. Now, what I decided on is that I have some family connections with RGC, and it led me to almost a full-time program, and working with Mark Jones, which was the main reason why I wanted to go there.
Great guy, and great coach, isn't he?
Really good guy. Yeah, really good. Yeah. Real hands-on. Obviously knew him from previously, obviously played with my dad and stuff. So signed for RGC, spent 2 years there. And for me, I look back and I couldn't be happier with the work that I've done there. I played 50 consecutive games there, started 50 consecutive games, hardly came off the pitch. Now, for me, as a 20 to 22-year-old lads, those 50 games are 50 games where I am of playing experience. You can do all the training you want, but to be in the thick of it, week in, week out, and not just playing Welsh Prem, you're playing against some boys that have dropped down from the Blues, Dragons, Ospreys, Scarlets. So you're playing against some boys which are professionally contracted. So they were some high quality games, some of them. They were just as close as professional games as I've experienced. So 50 games without coming off the pitch, I learned a lot about myself, about my game, about reacting in different situations. And then after RGC, I felt like there was a time for a change. I think I needed, with all due respect, to step up in quality of rugby and to be in a fully professional environment, and Bodes gave me that opportunity. And I look back, and similar to RGC in the Welsh Prem, in the Champ, there's a lot of talent which goes unnoticed, in my opinion, from the Premiership or from the regions. So the regions, I feel, don't look at the Welsh Prem enough, and I feel like the Premiership here don't look at the Champ enough. Because the last 2 years, again, I feel like my game has taken another step. I've played quite a lot of rugby in my 2 seasons here, and I want more. Do you know what I mean? I want more rugby, and I'm enjoying playing week in, week out to the Champ. And my experience of the Champ is that it's a lot more physical, a lot faster, and I feel a lot more sore on a Sunday or a Saturday if it's a Friday night game after the games. So that's my view on the Champ now. Now, going back to what my view of the Champ was, is when I was playing at the Scarlets, I actually had a little taste of it when we played the B&I Cup, the old B&I Cup. Now, I remember actually going to Bedford and turning Bedford over at their own spot. That was a big win for us as a Scarlets A side.
Don't remember that, really. It didn't happen.
I don't know about that.
I think it was this. You learn a lot then. But like there was 1 year we went to Leinster A away, And we got pumped, as a Scarlet say, 70 odd points. And I'm not even exaggerating, it was 70 odd points. Now, the week after, they came to Carmarthen Park and we turned them over at Carmarthen Park, and it was exactly the same side. So in that side, you had boys like Jordan Lama, Ross Byrne, boys like that now playing week in, week out for Leinster. Now I'm thinking back, the same season, Scarlets actually made the playoffs to the B&I Cup semi-finals. Now we took a really good side. I started 10 that day. We took a really good side to Ealing, and we, with, you can watch my language, but we got our handed to us. We lost 80 odd points at Ealing, and that was my lasting impression of the champ. I was thinking, wow, if this is what you're up against every week, then it's a tough old league to play in. And it hasn't disappointed me so far in the Donny jersey.
Another mention there, Mark, for the British and Irish Cup. We talked about it, but it's cyclical almost, the conversation coming around again. Great to hear those stories. Great to hear those names, getting involved in the competition. It needs to find its way back in some shape or form, doesn't it?
Actually, so I want to pick up on something Billy mentioned, because I think it's really, really important. And that was about when you played 50 games on the trot. That is where, not just you, this is where young rugby players learn their skills, they learn their trade.
Yeah.
Not sitting in an academy, getting a game every month or two if you're lucky. And we were talking before you came on, Billy, about how the championship should perhaps be embraced by English rugby in its bigger format. And it should be absolutely that. It should be where young rugby boys come and learn their skills. And you don't learn that unless you play regular rugby.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And as I said, I can only speak firsthand. I've learned so much about myself and my game in those 50 games. Do you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, there was a few games there which I didn't perform to my best. And I know I could have done better, but that adds to the whole thing about playing regular rugby.
Yeah.
And as you say,
you learn from your errors too, don't you? You can't make errors. How do you learn?
100%. And don't get me wrong, nobody was more disappointed to be dropped in a regional team than me. I'm a Scarlets fan through and through. I grew up watching my dad play for Llanelli, grew up watching him play for the Scarlets, and to represent my home region really was it was a proud moment. But then to be dropped from your own region is also bitterly disappointing.
Yeah.
Now for me, I could have chosen another route and gone to another academy, but for me it was about a 20-year-old coming out of, or 21-year-old coming out of a regional system, still a bit rough around the edges. I wanted to play week in, week out in a team that was constantly performing, that could provide me with a consistency of, I'm playing with a same scrum half every week, a similar centre partnership, a similar backline every week, and a forward pack which rarely changed. Now, as a young 10, those 50 games, I look back with fondness of those 50 games because, without them, I wouldn't be in a Donny jersey today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably a pretty decent place to sign off, I would have thought, because, we've all made our case for the championship. But to hear those sort of words, on behalf of a player, it really is about, providing an opportunity. And I know that a lot of people listening to this will probably be in agreement anyway. We're kind of preaching to the choir, but my goodness, don't we need to get the noise out there? My thanks hugely to Mark Morgan from Jersey Red. Thank you, Mark. Good luck this weekend against London Scottish. I hope it goes well for you boys. Brilliant to hear from you, Billy, as well. Good luck this weekend against Coventry. I hope that goes for you as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and my thanks to Gareth.
I think you were brilliant, Sam. I think Gully and Mike, they'll be worried about the time frame because we're still going, but well done, Sam. You've done a great job.
That's not what I was fishing for at all, but thank you very much indeed. Thank you for listening as well.
You definitely were.
Yeah. Anyway, right, I'm just going to sign off. Thank you, chaps. Thank you for everyone listening. Keep shouting loud and proud about Championship Rugby. It really is the way forward. Safe journeys. Goodbye.
That was the Championship Clubs podcast. Be Be sure to come back in a fortnight's time and follow us on social media at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter.